If you had bariatric surgery and now you're watching the weight creep back on, you're not alone. All right. You're not a failure. Look, studies show that 76% of bariatric patients regain weight within 5 years. But they also don't tell you exactly why this happens and how to prevent it. If you're new here, I'm Jessica Lawson. I'm a bariatric coach, a certified nutrition coach, an emotional eating coach, and I've helped hundreds of high achieving professionals that have had bariatric surgery stop their regain for good using my proven 4-step system. So stay with me because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why regain happens and you'll have a clear roadmap to stop it. But before we dive in, let me be clear about something crucial. Your surgery did not fail. There was nothing wrong with it, and neither have you failed either. The real issue is that surgery fixed your stomach, but honestly, there was probably nothing wrong with your stomach in the first place. But it never fixed your brain or the reasons why you needed surgery and got overweight, obese in the first place. Okay? That is exactly why regain happens. And I know because I've been there myself. I'm a bariatric patient who learned how to maintain my results by addressing what surgery couldn't touch. And there are 5 key reasons that I've seen over and over as the key culprits of regain. So let's dive into reason number 1. But before we do that, hit that subscribe button for more videos like this about how to be successful after bariatric surgery and learn how to prevent regain or stop regain dead in its tracks and keep the weight off. Reason number 1, the honeymoon phase ends and nobody prepared you for the neurological shift that happens next. Look, most bariatric patients experience regain about 18 to 24 months after the bariatric surgery. Why does this happen? Because during the first 18 months, your surgery and your metabolic reset is doing most of the heavy lifting. Your appetite's suppressed, portions are automatically controlled to an extent, and the weight might feel like it's coming off almost effortlessly. But here's what's actually happening in your brain. Immediately after surgery, your hunger hormone ghrelin drops dramatically. This hormone is produced in the stomach and signals to your brain when you're hungry. With less ghrelin circulating, your brain isn't getting those intense hunger signals that it used to. But then around 18 to 24 months post-op, your body starts to adapt. Your remaining stomach tissue begins producing more ghrelin again. Not as much as before surgery, but enough to wake up those hunger pathways in your brain. Simultaneously, your brain's reward centers start expecting more stimulation from food again. This is when people panic, absolutely panic, and think their surgery failed. But this is completely normal neurological adaptation. Your brain is literally rewiring itself back towards pre-surgery patterns. But the difference is now you have a smaller stomach and the same brain is trying to drive your eating behaviors. The truth is, this transition period is when you need new strategies specifically designed for your post-bariatric brain and body because you can't rely on the surgical suppression anymore. Reason number 2, decision fatigue is depleting your brain's executive function because you're making over 200 food decisions every single day. And I know that sounds like a lot, but when you think about it, it's really not. That is 100% what's happening. And it's literally exhausting your brain's executive function. And think about it. What should I eat for breakfast? Is this protein enough? Should I have a snack? What about dinner? Can I eat this at this restaurant? Every single food choice that you make requires what neuroscientists call executive function. And that's the same mental resource that you use for problem solving, planning, and impulse control. But here's what's happening in your brain. Your prefrontal cortex, that's the CEO of your brain, has to evaluate every food decision. But research shows that this region has limited capacity. It's like a muscle that gets tired throughout the day. For high-achieving professionals especially, you're already making hundreds of complex decisions at work and using up your brain's executive function. So by the time you get to food choices, your prefrontal cortex is completely depleted. This is called decision fatigue. And when it happens, your brain defaults to what neuroscientists call System 1 thinking, automatic, habitual responses. So even though you know what you should eat, your tired brain reaches for convenient foods or starts grazing throughout the day. And it's not lack of willpower, it's literal brain exhaustion. Your prefrontal cortex can't override the automatic impulses coming from your limbic system, which is always looking for quick energy and comfort. This is why willpower-based approaches always fail long-term. You're already asking an overworked part of your brain to make even more decisions when what you really need are systems that eliminate decision-making altogether. Reason number 3, and this is the big one, surgery was just on your stomach. It did not rewire a single neural pathway in your brain. And here's what I mean. Before surgery, there are reasons why you gained the weight, became overweight, obese, and needed to get bariatric surgery. If you're getting weight loss surgery, you're kind of at a point where you've exhausted all your options. And I know because I was 300 pounds at 5'1". Maybe you ate when you were stressed, you celebrated with food, or turned to eating when you were overwhelmed. Every time you did this, you strengthened what neuroscientists call neural pathways, which are basically little highways in your brain that connect specific triggers to specific responses. So when you're stressed, your brain releases cortisol and activates your amygdala. That's your brain's alarm system. And over the years or decades, your brain learned that food soothes this activated state. It created a superhighway from stress signal directly to seek food. So surgery changed your stomach, but it didn't touch the neural pathways. So what happens? If you're in a stressful meeting or you're in a stressful situation with a loved one, a family member, a friend, whatever, your amygdala is going to fire up. Cortisol floods your system, and your brain automatically sends the signal, go get food. Except now you feel guilty because you think that you should have better control because you got a new stomach. Here's the thing. These neural pathways are so well established that they fire in milliseconds, 0.2 seconds to be specific, which is way faster than your conscious brain can intervene. So you start grazing, snacking, picking, or finding ways around your surgical restrictions because the underlying neurological triggers are still there, operating below your conscious awareness. And the same thing happens with celebration eating, boredom eating, or any emotional eating pattern that you had before surgery. Your brain literally had these responses hardwired. The neurological pathways that connect stress to eating, celebration to food, or boredom to snacking, surgery cannot change those. This is why some people can follow their surgeon's guidelines perfectly and still struggle. Because your brain is running on old programming, and no amount of willpower can permanently override neural pathways that have been strengthened over decades. All right, you need specific techniques to literally rewire these pathways, which is completely possible, but it requires brain-focused strategies, not just some nutrition plan, a meal plan, or stomach-focused rules. Reason number 4, metabolic damage. Your metabolism has adapted, and previous years of yo-yo dieting, especially if you're dealing with regain too, you've probably started yo-yo diet again because that's what you know. But all of it has created what researchers call metabolic damage, and your brain is fighting you every step of the way. Because here's something most people don't understand about how your brain controls your metabolism. Your hypothalamus, a small region in your brain, acts like a thermostat for your metabolic rate. It has years of yo-yo dieting before surgery, and this brain region learned to be very protective, slowing your metabolism whenever it sensed famine. After surgery, as you lose weight rapidly, your brain interprets this as a major threat. It doesn't know you had just had surgery. It just knows that you're burning through fat stores quickly. It starts slowing your metabolic rate even more to conserve energy and increases production of hormones that make you want to eat. Here's where it gets tricky. Around 18 to 24 months post-op, when your appetite starts returning, you're now eating more calories, but your brain is still running your metabolism in conservation mode. Your hypothalamus is basically saying, we need to restore those fat stores ASAP in case another famine comes. Plus, so many bariatric patients make the mistake of going back to their pre-surgery diet mentality or right after surgery, restricting severely, doing pouch resets with liquids, or trying to eat like they did in month 3 post-op. This sends panic signals to your brain, which responds by slowing your metabolism even more and ramping up the hunger hormones. And this creates what I call the restrict and rebound cycle. Your brain interprets restriction as starvation, so it fights back with intense cravings, slowed metabolism, and obsessive food thoughts. Then, when you inevitably eat more, your slowed metabolism means those calories are more likely to be stored as fat. So your post-bariatric body needs a completely different approach, one that works with your brain's metabolic control systems rather than fighting against them. This means eating enough to keep your hypothalamus calm while using specific strategies to gradually restore metabolic flexibility. Now let's talk about reason number 5, my favorite to talk about. All or nothing thinking. I've never met a bariatric patient that does not have this problem. Why else would you amputate your body and cut 80% of your stomach out? All or nothing thinking is literally triggering your brain's stress response system, all right? This is driving the exact behaviors that you are trying to avoid. Most high-achieving people are perfectionists, and your brain is wired for black and white thinking, especially if you've been dieting your entire life. You're either on plan and doing everything perfectly, or you're completely off track and feeling like a failure starting over again every single Monday. Does that sound familiar? Because I bet it does. But here's what perfectionism does to your brain. When you have that thought of, I ate one bite too much, so my whole day must be ruined, or I gained 2 pounds, so I might as well give up. You're activating what neuroscientists call your threat detection system. And your amygdala, the alarm bell in your brain, which we talked about earlier, cannot tell the difference between a real physical threat, like being chased by a lion, and the psychological threat of failing at your eating plan. So it triggers the exact same stress response. Cortisol floods your system, your executive function goes offline, and your brain starts desperately seeking ways to feel better quickly. And what's the fastest way your brain knows how to soothe stress? Foods high in sugar, fat, or salt. Because these trigger dopamine release in your reward centers, temporarily calming that activated stress response. And this creates what researchers call emotional cascading, where one small slip up triggers massive stress, which triggers eating, which triggers guilt and shame, which triggers more stress, which triggers more eating. It's a neurological vicious cycle. Here's what's really fascinating. All right. Studies show that people on a weight loss journey who practice what psychologists call self-compassion, which is basically just treating themselves with kindness when they make mistakes, actually have better long-term weight management outcomes. Yeah. Why is this? Well, self-compassion keeps your stress response calm, which then keeps your executive function online, which means that you can make better choices moving forward. Real long-term success requires rewiring your brain away from all or nothing thinking and towards what I call progress, not perfection. This means having systems that account for real life slip-ups and the messiness of being a human while keeping your stress response calm so your brain can actually support your goals instead of sabotaging them. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, yep, that's me, I relate to 1, 2, 3, 4, or all 5, do not panic, because understanding why you struggle with your weight or why regain happens is the first step to stopping it. And I want to share with you next the exact 4-step system that I use with my clients and that I used on myself to not just stop regain and stop struggling with your weight, but to actually solve all these problems and create long-term food freedom so that you don't ever have to worry about struggling with your weight again. Step 1 is the reset and reignite system. This is not a pouch reset. This is all about resetting and fixing your broken bariatric metabolism. All right, here's exactly how you're going to do it. Okay, first off, we've got to assess what's broken. Ask yourself these questions. When did the regain start? When did you start struggling with your weight again after surgery? What was happening in your life? What are you eating? What do the macronutrients look like of what you're eating? How much protein are you eating? And not just any protein, but are you eating protein shakes, protein bars, things that aren't real whole nutrient dense protein? Or are you eating complete proteins from animal products or plant products that your body can actually use? Ask yourself if you're eating frequently enough to actually keep your blood sugar stable, or are you accidentally triggering your brain starvation response? Next, implement a strategic metabolic reset using real food. Okay, here's what this looks like. For the next 7 to 10 days, eat every 3 to 4 hours without fail. Your bariatric brain needs consistent fuel to trust that food is available. This calms your hypothalamus and stops it from slowing your metabolism. Choose dense proteins at each meal: Greek yogurt, eggs, lean meats, fish. Here's the key: pair each protein with a small amount of complex carbs like berries or sweet potato, quinoa, etc. And I know this sounds counterintuitive, but your brain needs glucose to function properly. And when you restrict too much, too severely, you're actually signaling to your brain that you're going through a famine. Next, we want to create a morning metabolism priming ritual. The second you wake up, I want you to have a water bottle on your bed. Start drinking water, okay? I aim for 12 to 16 ounces the second I wake up. 30 minutes later, eat your first meal. You should be eating your first meal within the first hour of being awake. This signals to your brain that it's safe to ramp up your metabolic rate for the day. Next, we need to establish an evening anti-grazing protocol. Set a kitchen cutoff time. Close the kitchen. Maybe it's 8 p.m. Pick a time that works for you. Then brush your teeth, change to pajamas, or do something that signal eating is done for the day. I work with my clients to figure out what this looks like for them one-on-one, but this helps retrain your brain's circadian eating rhythms. Now, there's a lot more that goes into this and the nitty-gritty details, but this is it at a super duper high level. And within a week, you should notice controlled hunger, steady energy, and your brain starting to trust that consistent fuel is coming. Now let's talk about step 2. All right. Step 2 is the effortless nutrition system. Here's how we make nutrition simple, easy, automatic, because the problem is decision fatigue. You're making way too many decisions. You don't know what to do, etc. So we got to eliminate that. First, we got to start by identifying your decision danger zones. All right. For most people, it's breakfast. Maybe it's too rushed. Or if it's lunch, it's too busy. Or evening snacking. Maybe you're too tired. Pick one meal to systematize first. Do not try to fix everything at once. You are going to crash and burn and fail. All right. Next, we want to create our default meal templates. Let's say you pick breakfast. Your template might be protein, a healthy fat, and an optional complex carb. So that could be Greek yogurt with nuts and berries, or eggs with avocado and toast. Having a template means that your brain doesn't have to decide from scratch every single morning. Then we need to build our grab-and-go systems. Spend 60-90 minutes on Sunday preparing components, not necessarily full meals. Cook a batch of protein, wash and cut veggies, portion out nuts or cheese. This way, assembling meals becomes automatic instead of overwhelming. Then we need to develop situation-specific defaults. What do you always order at a regular lunch spot? What's your go-to when traveling? When you're stressed and tempted to graze, what are you going to eat? You don't need to eat something if you're feeling not physically hungry. Having predetermined choices eliminates the mental energy drain of constant decision-making. And then lastly, we got to create some restaurant scripts. You need to know exactly what you're going to order. And maybe you do script out what you're going to say if you struggle with that. So maybe you say, I'm going to have the grilled chicken salad with dressing on the side, and can you substitute the croutons for extra avocado, please? Having scripts ready means that your exhausted brain doesn't have to negotiate with menus when you're already overwhelmed. So the goal of this step is just to reduce food decisions from 200 plus per day to maybe 10, 15 conscious choices, while the rest are running on autopilot because you've already done the work to make them. Step 3, the food freedom framework, okay? This is Big Bertha. This is the ultimate brain rewiring step, all right? We start with getting ourselves back on track, which I hate saying that, but that's essentially what this is. We work on nutrition, eliminate the number of decisions we got to make. Now in step 3, it's all about rewiring the neural pathways that drive emotional eating, food noise, all of the bad decision-making that we do around food, all right? So here's the step-by-step process. First, we gotta map our eating triggers. For 1 week, every time you eat outside of a planned meal, ask yourself, what's going on? What was I thinking? What was I feeling? Where was I? What just happened? You're looking for patterns. Maybe it's always after difficult phone calls or when you're driving past a certain place. For me, before surgery, it was when I was coming home on my 1.5 hour long evening commute from the office. I would stop at Taco Bell literally the second I was out of work because I hadn't eaten anything all day. Or maybe it's when you feel overwhelmed by your to-do list. Next, we've got to identify our trigger timeline. Most emotional eating follows a very predictable sequence. The trigger happens, the stress response activates. There's a 2 to 5 minute window. If it's that long, then you automatically reach for food. The key is catching yourself in that 2 to 5 minute window before the automatic response kicks in. Next, we want to create pattern interruption techniques. We got to implement some. This is absolutely critical. The moment that you notice the trigger, you have a brief window to interrupt the automatic pathway. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to do the stop technique. This is my signature pattern interruption technique that I created. So as to stop, pause what you're doing, like physically stop. Don't stop thinking about what you're thinking about, but just pause physically, whatever you're doing. T, take a breath, 3 deep breaths, and then think, what's going on right now? What am I feeling? And then observe. Is O, am I feeling physically hungry or emotional head hunger? All right. And then P, proceed with intention instead of automation. If you're feeling physically hungry, go eat something. We are not in the business of depriving ourselves food, because guess what? That's going to create and continue this cycle of restriction. It's just going to end up with you continuing to binge. All right. If you're feeling head hunger, emotional hunger, then that's when we use a coping mechanism. All right. Which leads us to the next step, which is we got to build your 2-minute toolkit. What can you do in 2 minutes that actually addresses the real need behind the eating urge? Are you feeling stressed? If you are, try box breathing. This is where you inhale for 4, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4, hold for 4 counts. Are you bored? Send a text to a friend or step outside and go for a walk and call a friend. Are you feeling overwhelmed? Write down 3 things on your mind to get them out of your head. I give my clients an entire list of a lot more things than just this, but this will give you a starting place. Then the next step, we got to practice this new neural pathway. Take 66 reps of doing something to build a neural pathway, but that's just building the bridge. We have to strengthen it, all right? So every time you use a pattern interruption technique instead of turning to food, you're literally strengthening that new neural pathway. And it takes about 3 weeks, if you do it enough, those 66 reps of consistent practice, for your brain to start defaulting to the new response instead of the old one. And remember, this is not about willpower. Willpower does not work. It's about giving your brain a better option that actually meets the underlying need. Last step, step 4, the long-term success system. This is where we build your bulletproof maintenance system so you never fear reeating again. Here's how to set this up. First off, we've got to define your maintenance range. Not a single number. You need to choose a 5 to 10 pound range that feels comfortable. Maybe it's 165 to 170 pounds or 190 to 200. This eliminates the daily panic about scale fluctuations while keeping you aware of real trends. Then you've got to set up your early detection system. Weigh yourself weekly, same day, same time, but also we got to track non-scale metrics. How do your clothes fit? What's your energy levels? How's your sleep? Are thinking about food constantly again? These indicators often change before the scale does. Then we've got to create your 2-pound rule. If you hit the top of your maintenance range, we immediately implement a 3-day protocol. This is not a pouch reset. Again, if you haven't gotten that through your head yet, pouch resets do not work. We're going to go back to eating every 3 to 4 hours. If we're not doing that, we're going to increase our protein a little bit and eliminate snacking. All right, I don't believe in snacking. You shouldn't believe in snacking either. Next, we've got to design situation-specific protocols. Before holiday season, business trips, or stressful periods, decide in advance what your strategy will be. Maybe it's, I'm just going to eat normally at 1 holiday party per week and then bring a protein-rich meal to the others. Having a plan eliminates the in-the-moment decisions when your executive function is compromised. Then, we got to build your support systems. This might be a weekly check-in with yourself, tracking your habits in an app, having an accountability partner. The key is creating external structure that supports your goals when motivation inevitably fluctuates. And then lastly, we got to plan for imperfection. You're never going to be perfect. Do not plan to be perfect. What are you going to do when you have a slip up? What are you going to do when you're not perfect? So for example, if I overeat, I'm going to get back to my normal routine at the very next meal and remind myself that one meal does not undo my progress. The goal of this step is creating a system so robust that maintaining your weight becomes automatic, not something that requires constant mental energy. If you made it this far in this video, here's what I want you to understand. Regain isn't inevitable. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you need new strategies specifically designed for your post-bariatric brain and body. So if you're ready to stop the regain and finally achieve the food freedom that you thought surgery would give you, I want to help. I work with a small number of high-achieving professionals in my comprehensive coaching program where we implement this exact system together. So If you're interested in that, click the link in the description to apply and book a free strategy call where we're going to assess your specific situation, create a personalized plan to stop your regain for good. But here's the thing, I only work with people who are truly committed to transformation, not just another quick fix. Don't believe in quick fixes if that wasn't clear. And if this video helped you understand why regain happens, do me a favor and share it with another bariatric patient who might be struggling. Because sometimes just knowing that you're not alone and it's not your fault is the first step to turning things around. And remember that surgery gave you a tool, but lasting success comes from learning how to use that tool with a brain that's been rewired for food freedom. Look, you've got this. I'm here to help, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want more science-backed strategies to be successful after surgery. Until next time, keep taking care of yourself, prioritizing yourself because you deserve it.